Morning Majlis, talking the stories that are shaping headlines. This is Pulse 95.
This is Pulse 95 and a very good morning. Welcome back onto the Morning Majlis. Now, guys, this is a very, very topical discussion. It's something that's got everyone talking about. The reason being is because we've got a number of snake sightings. A lot of people have spotted them along the beaches, and they've been very, very scared and even posted on their own social media saying, "What do I do? Oh my gosh," and they panic. And everyone, no matter how trained they call themselves, the snakes do appear at the time where you least expect them to, and you have no clue how to react to it. So, to ease your concerns, we're going to be talking to Fadi Yaghmour, who is a scientific researcher at the Emirates, the Environment Protected Areas Authority in the Emirate of Sharjah. A very good morning to you, Fadi.
Good morning. How are you?
Well, we're very well. Thank you for joining us. Now, I've got to ask you this question. What's going on? Why are the sightings so common at the moment? And where do we normally find these snakes?
So these are by and large seasonal events. Every year when the weather cools around August and September, we begin to see an increase in marine strandings, particularly at the Arabian Gulf Coast of the UAE. And this usually starts with sea snakes, but it does follow other species such as seabirds and sea turtles in later months. What's interesting and different about this year is that we're seeing much more sea snakes than we have in previous years. EPA is investigating this very closely, but the evidence does suggest that this is in part driven by that sea snakes are now birthing. The evidence for this is that the vast majority of the snakes that we're getting are neonates or newborn sea snakes. And the vast majority of adults are females, and most of them are gravid or pregnant.
And when we're talking about the weather, you mentioned the weather briefly. What is the best weather? Do snakes come out and basically where does their activity pick up mainly? Like what months and what is the exact weather condition? And do we find snakes mainly in the deserts or where exactly?
So what we're talking about here, sea snakes. There are snakes in the desert, of course, and there's a diversity of herpafauna in the desert. But what we're talking about here are marine snakes, and those we're seeing on the beaches. And this is not due to their activity. This is more due to them being stressed out. Sea snakes never need to come to land. They're not like sea turtles that go to land to lay their eggs and then come back to sea. Sea snakes never have any reason to go to shore, and if you see them on the shoreline, they're probably stressed or dead and are either in need of disposal or support. With the change in the weather right now, the weather gets colder everywhere as we start getting into the colder seasons. But in the Arabian Gulf, that shift in temperature is rapid, and it can cause the animals to get cold stunned. And they don't acclimate quickly enough. Some of them get sick and tired, and they end up on the beaches.
And Fadi, I have a question about the behavior of these snakes. As someone who's afraid of snakes, if I'm out swimming, do you think a sea snake would want to approach me or attack me? How do these snakes generally behave around humans? Could you elaborate on that?
So sea snakes are around. They're quite subtle and protected, so they're not typically easy to observe. If you come across them while swimming, just gives the snake plenty of space to move freely. Sea snakes will never pursue people with aggressive intent. What's important these days is that what we're seeing are snakes that are stranding ashore. And these snakes can be a bit more stressed, and they might be slightly more aggressive. But what you can do when you see a snake on the shoreline is you just need to inform your lifeguard, and then you need to inform the Environment and Protected Areas Authority if you are in Sharjah or their equivalent in adjacent Emirates. But but it's important just to note the sea snake is aware of the situation that it's in just as you are. So it's not going to give chase and aggressively attack what is to it a giant that it has no chances of defeating. The snakes are quite gentle and they're quite calm creatures when they are in the water, and they will not show much interest towards people and definitely not pursue them with any form of aggression.
Well, let's say the snake was feeling particularly brave that day and decided to bite me. How dangerous are sea snake bites? Should the worst case scenario happen? What do I need to do? And what are the odds that people would die from something like this?
So I will preface what I'm about to say that the snakes do not decide to go bite people. The venom is basically protein based. It's very expensive on the snake's body, and it does need it to pursue its prey. But sea snakes are members of the cobra family, so their bite is incredibly potent. And it has to be because in order for it to catch fish or other prey items in the sea, it needs to be able to stun and kill that prey relatively quickly before the fish swims away. But with that said, sea snakes are very docile in the sea. They're incredibly shy and gentle animals, and they do not pursue people. If you do, or if someone does, God forbid, get bitten, they should calmly but rapidly seek medical attention, go to their nearest emergency room, and the medical personnel will deal with the bite or treat the bite symptomatically.
Is there any first aid that we need to be mindful of? Because, you know, the first thing that people are scared of is, I've been bitten, I have 15 minutes to live. You know, I'm going to panic. So they panic at that stage. So is any first aid? Should the hospital be a bit far away? Should it be a walk away to get to your car to be driving off towards the hospital?
Well, luckily in the United Arab Emirates, almost all these snakes are on the shore, and most shorelines are within good proximity of hospitals. The UAE has very rapid response to any medical emergencies, so the ambulance will come pick you up relatively easily. And it's also important to note that in these cases, I mean, so far in the UAE history, we haven't had a single case of a sea snake bite, lethal or sublethal. What you can do in that case, the most important thing you can do is not panic and just carry yourself to the nearest hospital. There's chances that these bites are dry bites. Sea snakes or all snakes can sometimes bite just to warn you without really injecting their venom in you. Because like I said earlier, venom is quite expensive on the snake's body. So it's important to not alarm the listeners. And these things are quite common. People encounter snakes even when they do not notice all the time while swimming. And these animals tend to be quite evasive and quite docile.
You're only mentioning snakes on the shoreline. Are there any other habitats that snakes here in the UAE tend to be found at that we should be concerned about?
I would say, well, the topic we're discussing today are the sea snakes, and those would be mostly in either coastal or pelagic waters, depending on the species. And only if they are stressed or dead would they be found on the beaches. Other species, of course, are prolific throughout the desert or the terrestrial habitats. There are vipers that occur here, and there are colored snakes. Most of them are quite harmless, and the vipers can be harmful. However, they do make their presence readily apparent when you come near them. And I guess I would say the medical support is available in the UAE for most of these bites to be sublethal or not deadly.
So your main advice is if you spot one, you just let them be. Don't approach, don't get close to them. Is that what I'm getting at?
Well, if you see them it depends. If we're talking about the marine snakes and you are swimming, then let the snake be and it will let you be. Give it some, distance, and do not panic if it comes close to you. It's not interested in you per se. It's probably looking around you for fish. So it wouldn't come to you bravely and attack you. On the shoreline, it is important that you contact your lifeguard and also contact the EPAA in Sharjah or their equivalent in adjacent Emirates.
And the ones in the desert, this is also quite useful to know, because there's going to be a lot of people who are going to go off-roading, camping, because the weather is getting better. So just a bit of a note for them to be mindful of their presence. How should they react when they do come across even a viper, for example?
So a viper is unlike other snakes, or some snakes will avoid people as they see them. Those are snakes that are a bit more agile. Vipers tend to hunker down and hide. Okay. But they make their presence known sometimes by making sounds if people come near them, such as the saw-scaled viper. The name the saw-scale comes because it will rub its scales together and it will make the sound of a saw. And it gives you plenty of chances and plenty of warnings to kind of give it some space. Snakes are quite slow, and snakes will not pursue you, so you just give them some healthy distance, and that tends to resolve the issue. If you find yourself in a situation where, for example, you find a snake in your backyard or in a mosque, contact your local municipality or your local environmental authority, and they will quickly remove the animal and release it somewhere far from human habitation.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's so much to ponder over, and so much to gather our thoughts with the information shared. Thank you very much for joining us, Fadi, this morning, and we hope that we rescue more sea snakes, and also that everyone is more aware of how to deal with them.
Thanks for having me.
Well, with pleasure speaking to you. So that was Fadi Yaghmour, who is a scientific researcher at the Environment and Protected Areas Authority. Now, one of the reasons why we did bring him on is because we did receive lots of text messages. We did receive lots of people sharing their thoughts on the fact that they've sighted more sea snakes in the Emirate of Sharjah. And luckily, Fadi was here to brief us and let us know that there's nothing to be worried about. Stay with us on the Morning Majlis, guys. Lots to discuss and lots to catch up on here on the program, and we'll be back right after some more musical entertainment.
If you liked this episode of the Morning Majlis, drop a like and subscribe.
95.
Be sure to follow us on Instagram for all our daily updates and top stories.
Bubbles.